Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Play podcast, where we look to develop and promote a positive youth sports experience. As always, we are available for speaking and private engagements and can be reached at info@justgoplay.ca. You can also catch full video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit us at justgoplay.ca. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Just Go Play podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Devonish, also known as Coach D. I'm here with my special guest host, Taryn Lipschitz, and Happy New Year. We're back at it again. And for those that don't know about the Just Go Play, I'll just refresh your mind about what we do. Our goal is to help create quality coaching experiences for kids. We want kids to play sports for as long as they can in the best environment possible for their life, their whole life. And that's what we do. And we go out and we find the people that are doing it best in their communities, anywhere in the world. That's what Just Go Play is about. Helping, it's a resource for parents, coaches, players to have great quality sports experiences. All right. So today we got a special guest from the US of A, Brian Saunders from I9 Sports. And today's topic is going to be talking about building culture amongst young people. So we're talking really young. So this is going to be a great topic and to stick your teeth into. And I'm really excited because, this is something near and dear to my heart. Building culture, it's huge. Brian, welcome. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, and I am so excited to be part of this because I love what you guys are about, and thank you for creating this kind of a forum because it is so necessary.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. T, how you doing?
I'm great, Daryl. I'm excited to kick off the year, and I think this is going to be a great topic, and I'm really excited because you and I have already chatted to Brian a little bit, but Brian has so much experience and passion about what he does and just changing that experience for kids as they're entering the sport world and their first experiences. So I'm really looking forward to putting him on the spot and picking his brain.
He's on the hot seat. Great topic. Brian, just so we can get this rolling here and a little bit of background for our audience, can you give us a little bit about your backstory and your experience, just so people know why you're at the front of the room today?
Absolutely. So let me tell you who I9 Sports is. So I9 Sports is the largest and actually the first youth sports league franchise in the United States. And we serve boys and girls primarily ages 3 to 14. And we offer recreational sports leagues spanning 7 different sports: soccer, flag football, baseball, basketball, lacrosse, hockey, etc. And when we began back in 2003, we were launching ourselves with the idea of really changing the way youth sports are played, because, and I know I'm preaching to the choir somewhat here for the audience, but we all realize that youth sports have unfortunately jumped the track somewhat, and they become highly adultified, meaning overly competitive, overly political, and has essentially sucked the fun out of youth sports. And so our goal when we started was to create a model that was, instead of being adult focused, was kid focused and focused on fun and providing an opportunity for them to learn the sport, learn what they like, what they're good at, learn good sportsmanship, what it's like to be part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what we've been all about. So we're a franchise system, which means we allow and facilitate the execution of these youth sports leagues through franchise owners or franchisees across the country. So we started here in Tampa, Florida, and we're now playing in over 975 communities and locations across the U.S.
Wow, that's huge.
It's big. It really is. And we found ourselves, we certainly started out just wanting to be good at what we do. And really the novelty of what we were about early on was to say, let's make this about a youth sports experience where we really add the feel and the context to play, not only just for the kids, but also for the parents as well. So we're very focused on the customer experience. And that's where this whole culture subject that you all put on the table is all about, because culture is key. That is what basically underpins that whole experience.
I love it. I love it. T?
I love it, Brian. I think this is such a great topic because we all know how important culture is. And I think for our audience too, why is it so critical to build culture, especially starting at such a young age and in the way that you guys have structured it?
Yeah, so when I think about culture of an organization, I think about an organization's shared beliefs, values, and behaviors. So those three things. And beliefs and values are kind of conceptual. And so some people might say, well, that's a little too touchy-feely for me. But behaviors, you can see those, you can feel it, you can experience it. So the behaviors are the ways in which an organization exhibits its shared beliefs and values. And so when you step back another level and you say, okay, well, who are those within a sports organization, a youth sports organization that have a stake in culture? It starts at the top. So the administrators or those that are actually putting on the programs are a stakeholder. You have the parents, you have the coaches, and lastly, you have the kids. Now, because our organization is again serving kids primarily ages 3 to 14, the kids as a stakeholder have the least control over the culture of the organization. So it starts at the top. And the way that we have built culture is by being very intentional about the culture we wanted to create. So our mission of I9 Sports is to help kids succeed in life through sports. And so we knew exactly what kind of culture we wanted to create. It had to be kid-centered. It had to be completely inclusive. We wanted to make it a place where all kids were welcome to play. And we knew we wanted to make it fun. And so we started by setting that out in terms of for anybody who's going to be involved in our program, saying this is the kind of culture we want to put out there. And we took it a step further. We said for parents, we want you to understand the kind of culture we want. So we created a parental pledge. And the parental pledge has to be signed or agreed to by all parents when they register their kids online. And to paraphrase, it simply says, I, as the parent or guardian of my child, understand that the number one reason my child is playing sports is to have fun, and that I, as the parent or guardian, am going to exhibit the same kinds of good sportsmanship-like behavior on the sidelines or in the stands as I would expect of my child on the field or court. I'll let the coach coach, I'll let the ref be the ref, and I'll sit back and let everybody have a good time. And that has made a huge difference in the culture and in the way things happen on the field. So we learned very early on that if we wanted to control what happened on the field or the court, we had to control what happened on the sidelines with the parents. We did the same thing with coaches. So we have a coach's pledge, which again just reminds coaches that coaching is about the kids and not about the coach's win-loss record. And then with the kids, we just are constantly reinforcing what we're about in the way we behave and the way that our programs are structured.
Wow. I cannot believe you guys have gone to this length to ensure culture was like such a key, value for your company. And obviously it sounds like it's working. You guys have 900 of them across the country. My question is, like, because this is not an easy thing to do. It's easy to say. What are the biggest challenges in building culture with this group, in this age group? What is the biggest challenge?
Gosh, you said it perfectly, which is culture. When you talk about it, it's easy to talk about. It's easy to build a page or a PowerPoint slide and say, here are the things that we want to value. But if you aren't intentional about putting boundaries around what you will accept in the way of behavior, if you don't back up what you're saying you value, then you're just giving lip service to it. So one of the biggest, most difficult things in setting and managing culture is being able to bring that culture to life. And sometimes that means having to be very intentional about what you won't accept in the way of behavior. And you have to be able to address it. Because if you don't, the culture, the question often I'm asked is, how do you build a culture? The culture, you're going to have a culture whether you want one or not. The question is, do you want to build an intentional culture to ensure that the behaviors you see on the field align with the values of the organization? If they don't, you're just kidding yourself. And parents and coaches will see right through it. And so let me be a little bit more specific. we're all humans, and sometimes we can all get caught up in the moment. And so if as an organization, you're not willing to say what's acceptable and not in your leagues, if that becomes more the rule than the exception, when people go over the top with their emotions and start yelling and screaming and throwing things at the referees, you've got a problem. So you have to be willing to say, that's not the kind of league we want to have. And that's where our parental and coach pledges become very important, because we can hold those documents up and pull a parent aside, or maybe it's a coach who's kind of forgotten what his or her role is supposed to be, pull them aside and tactfully say, remember this, remember that you agreed that this is going to be about the kids. And they'll say, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I lost my head, I got caught up in the moment. In the rare happenstance that that doesn't happen, and they just say, well, so-and-so made a bad call, and whatever the case may be, we're able to say, you know what, we just may not be the league for you. Let us give you the name and number of a guy running a program across town, and maybe that's a better fit for your value set.
So you guys have some, I love it. Do you get any pushback sometimes from some parents that say, hey, I want my kid to learn how to be a winner,
We do. We do. From time to time, we have that. And what that tells me is that we have not done the full job we need to do in managing expectations. Because if we've done a really good job of setting expectations up front and reinforcing it, then we shouldn't have those conversations. Because not only do we have the pledges, we have parent meetings, we have coach meetings, we have all kinds of literature online and our blogs and everything that you read about us. That value set should be crystal clear in terms of what we are and what we are not. There are a lot of great programs out there that if you have a super gifted athlete as a child and you want to provide that opportunity for them to go full on at a young age, that's great. That's a choice that a parent can make. That's not what we're about. We're about, as an organization, giving kids an opportunity to sample, try different sports. Everybody's welcome in our programs, and we rotate them through positions, and we encourage them to play different sports so that they really learn at a young age what they like and what they're good at.
It's awesome. That's why you have 900 of them.
Yeah.
I love it, Brian. I think it's so important because you're really taking the competitive nature out and bringing it back to the stakeholders, which are the kids, because we do want them to have a great experience and then stay in sports for life. Because you guys are structured in a different way, where you're asking parents to sort of go against what now they've been so used to seeing as the competitive, the focusing on the wins, do you find there's a lot of challenges bringing them into the system, or most of them are willing to look at this approach and are aligned with it? Do you find there is that big learning curve at the beginning?
I don't know. Actually, people, because again, going back to how we've tried to set expectations, people know what they're going to get when they sign up, and so we find people embrace it, and we actually get a lot of unsolicited thank you and feedback. We have a very big social media presence, and so we get a lot of feedback unsolicited through social media. We also do regular questionnaires after each season. Actually, the questionnaire goes out in the middle of each season so that we can really take a temperature reading of how people are responding to our programs. But we ask them whether or not they would recommend our program to others, why or why not. And that gives us a lot of information. And we find people really like what we're about. And I think one of the big misconceptions that people have is that to have a culture that is open and inclusive like ours, that it must be, again, a very touchy-feely league where we don't keep score, we don't believe in winning, and nothing could be further from the truth. We believe in healthy competition. We believe it's important for kids to learn how to win with humility and how to lose with grace, and those are important parts of growing up. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. We found a very happy medium in our world, and we find that parents and coaches really appreciate it.
My big question is, how do you find coaches like this, or do you guys have a program or a course that you have these coaches go through? Because these aren't all natural things. At least I don't think so. In the coaching that I've seen, it's not a natural thing to have that type of demeanor or approach to coaching young kids. So do you guys have a course or?
We do. So the coaches, just so everybody knows who are listening, the coaches in our program are for the most part volunteer coaches, and the vast majority are parents. So it helps that the parents that are signing the kids up understand and buy into the culture that we're trying to create. So that helps us. But beyond that, we have to understand and appreciate the fact that many of the coaches that we have coming in may not have coached at this level before. And so we do want to help them by giving them the tools on not only how to coach kids, but how to coach the sport and the value set that we're trying to create. So there is a coaching training that they go through, and it's a two-step training. So there's an online component where they are basically learning about I-9 sports and our culture, and how to coach kids. And then there's the more logistical aspect of it, which is more of an on-field training that happens as they get close to the season. And so it's a two-part piece. And then there are coaches' discussions held throughout the season in terms of things to be mindful of, so that as we approach the end of the season, when most of our franchise owners are having playoffs, nice healthy reminders, which is, look, let's make sure we remain true to ourselves and our values, don't get caught up in this. And so we basically handhold them from start to finish. We make it very easy for them, so that, again, being a coach in our league doesn't have to necessarily dominate their lives.
I love it. You don't leave it to chance. And that's what I think in the youth sports area or domain, it's left to chance. We just assume, well, that parent played hockey, or he played soccer, or he played baseball, he must know what he's doing. Or, we don't realize that he's never coached at this level, or he doesn't have the same philosophy as you guys. So we just, based on their experience, we let them do their thing. And
Right.
That's part of our challenge that we have with some of these, volunteer parent coaches. I love that you guys are proactive like that throughout the whole program. It sounds like, the right up to the, the questionnaires mid-season, you re-engage the coaches just before playoffs. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I love it so much. And I think what's great too is you're giving parents and the volunteer coaches the confidence to coach. I think, even when I was a kid, my mom was a volunteer coach for our soccer team, and she'd never played. And, she got a piece of paper to tell her what to do. But I think that's great for parents to also feel like they're going in and they're helping kids develop. I would love to know too, Brian, because you've been around how many years now? 25?
Well,
Since
you can tell from
2003.
the gray hair that I have a lot of experience. But with I-9 Sports, I joined back in 2008, so I'm going into my 13th year here. Started as president and COO and became CEO in 2015. So been around for a while.
Perfect. So have you seen too, because you've been there for 13 years, the kids that have started in the program 13 years ago, do you ever hear stories from them or from coaches or parents later on to say how much that benefited their kids later on in life?
We're starting to get those, because again, we oftentimes are a child's first youth sports experience. And so as we've now been around for a while, those stories are becoming more typical and more frequent. I heard one just last week about someone that was a high school child, and it was in something complete. It was a conversation I was having with a vendor, and the vendor said, "Oh my gosh, I was actually mentioning to my kids that I was talking with I-9 Sports, and their children had actually played with I-9 Sports as a young age." And one of their children said, "Oh my gosh, that was the best youth sports experience I've ever had. One of my most fun, favorite times." And that made me feel good, because again, it was very unsolicited. And so we are starting to get more of that kind of feedback.
I love that. And do you find too, because, Daryl, we've had many guests who've talked about this, the entry into youth sports, a lot of the time is park and recreation programs. And then you have sort of this gap between that and elite pay to play. Do you find too communities are really embracing I-9 coming in, because it is sort of that mix of more structured programming and more inclusive?
Yes, very much so. In fact, what I'm seeing in the youth sports ecosystem is that, to be overly grossly simplistic here, you've got on one side kind of the town leagues, and on the other end you have the elite club teams. And And there's this vast middle ground that has not really been served very well. And to be a little more specific on the community league side, there are some fine programs out there. I don't want to denigrate anybody, but the problem is it's very much a grab bag of an experience. You really don't know what you're going to get. And the experience that you get is completely driven by the randomness of the coach that you happen to get. So you might have a great experience, but there's no certainty you're going to have that same kind of experience next season. On the other end of it, on the club or the elite side, you know what you're going to get when you sign up. It's going to be a very intense experience, which is wonderful for the kids who happen to be quite gifted. Unfortunately, there are a lot of kids who are not. So the families are paying a huge premium to be part of a program where their child is likely to sit on the bench for most of the season. And how in the world can you learn a sport or learn what you like and how you're going to develop it if you don't get a chance to play? And those programs, again, tend to be hyper political, very competitive, and they can dominate a family's life because you're going to practices all week and traveling all weekend. And so we're seeing a big fallout from that scene where parents are saying, isn't there a happy medium where I can get structure, I can get some certainty of what I'm signing up for. I know my child is going to get to play. I know they're going to get some development and good coaching, but I know they're going to have fun. And I know that from this, it will launch them into a place where they view participation in sport as a positive thing instead of a negative. And that is the most important thing. Kids are leaving youth sports in droves because they see it as something negative. And we all have to fix that. All these stakeholders, all of us have a stake in changing the view and the perception of youth sports. And so if you're not making it a fun experience, why in the world would kids want to keep doing it?
It couldn't have been said better. One of the things you just touched upon there that, Taryn and myself and Matt Young have talked about is we glamorized that club elite athlete, and people are starting to find out it's not so glamorous. But on the other side, what we've done to the, I don't know if you guys call them house leagues over there or just the rec stuff, is we've almost made it seem like, you know what, if you play in that league, oh, you don't really care about sport or you don't really care about getting better. And people are almost embarrassed to tell people that they play in a rec league. That's what I think has to change. We need to somehow make playing recreational and participation like we got to pump it up. We got to glamorize it a little bit, and instead of putting it down. And I think too many people put it down. Oh, you only play rec. I get it. And kids hear that. I even hear parents when I say, oh, does your kid play hockey or soccer? He goes, yeah, he only plays rec. Like, and people don't think kids hear that and feel that, well, not good enough to play on the rep team. So I play rec, I play rec. That's what I think has to change, how we classify these, classify sports for kids, parents, because it's almost, for some kids, I think it's embarrassing to play in a rec league, and that's why they don't do it.
I think you're right, Joe. I think labels here, this is where labels can be very damaging, because when you say only rec, it does make it, it drops it down a level. And I think there has been, at least in the US anyway, there's been, I'd say over the past 10, 15 years, very much this element of keeping up with the Joneses. Putting your child on a program because they made the decision to go the elite route. And again, maybe that was a great fit for their child, but if you're putting your child in a league because of what a neighbor did or someone at school did, that's the wrong reason. What do you think is right for your child based on their needs and what they want? And it doesn't matter. You shouldn't put a label on the program. Is your child growing? Are they learning? What's the value set of that organization? And again, getting back to the culture, what is the culture of that organization? And does that align with what I want as a parent or what I believe as a coach?
And this is why culture is so important. And so this is why you're here, Brian.
I have one question before we start wrapping things up, Brian. What is, now that you guys are in almost 1,000 communities, What's the goal for I-9? What is that big mission that you guys are going to work to achieve over the next few years?
So we don't believe we've gotten even close to fulfilling our vision and our mission. And so, to say we want to serve more kids and more communities seems like an obvious thing, but that is what we want to do. And so I would say looking to the next 3 to 5 years, I would anticipate doubling in size. And we have aspirations of becoming global. There's nothing that we do that can't be exported into other countries. And we believe deeply in our mission of helping kids succeed in life through sports. And so we want to do that in as many places as we feasibly can.
I love it. Great topic. Brian, can you, just to wrap up, just for our audience, what we do is we have this thing called First Steps. So what's the first steps that parents, coaches, kids, what can they take away from this? Give us, 2 or 3 things that you think that they could walk away with from this.
I would say the first is an acknowledgement that culture is intentional, and that if you don't make it intentional, it'll happen on its own, and it may not be the culture you want. So for a provider, for a coach, and for parents, you all have a stake in creating culture. So the first thing I would suggest is acknowledging that. The second would be look at the behaviors that you see in the programs that you're involved in and decide and gauge whether you believe the evidence of the culture is what you believe it should be. Because if you're seeing behaviors that don't align with the beliefs and the values that are espoused by that organization, then there's a problem and you need to address it. So again, go to the stakeholders, parents, coaches, administrators, and saying, I'm seeing something that I think is a misalignment, and I'd like to be part of driving that change.
Wow. I love it. T, you want to add anything or?
I love it. And I think, Brian, I'm going to have to quote one of our guests from last year. We had Heath from A Better Way on, and Heath said, one day he realized he was either going to be he was going to contribute to the problem or be part of the solution. And I think that's exactly the same message we have for everyone. It's, if you see something and it's not right, it doesn't align with your values, it doesn't seem right for especially the stakeholders, which are the kids, then you need to speak up and you need to take action. So I think this is amazing. And I think if anyone does have questions about I-9 or how they can be in your community, we'll make sure to include a link and they can check you guys out.
Wonderful.
This is, I just want to wrap up. Great topic today for the listening audience here. Culture, guys, it begins with culture and it starts from a young age. Don't wait. As he said, it has to be intentional. It's not by accident your kid is going to love sports or whatnot. You're going to put them with you need to be intentional about how you approach sports with your kids. And that's how you're going to get the best quality experiences. I think there's a lot of value in this program today. The fee is to send this to people that you think need to hear this. And there's a lot of people that need to hear this. Brian, thanks for being here today. I love what you guys are doing, I-9 Sports. We need more of that in Canada. We got to figure out a way how to get this over here in Canada. Thanks again. And T, I was great. And on that note, just go play, guys. Get out there, just go play. Have a good one.